In the ancient era, most women were considered secondary citizens and were ruled by their men. However, there was one place that stood out and went in the opposite direction, namely ancient Egypt, because women in ancient Egypt had some special rights other women did not have in other societies at the time. They could own property, choose their own profession, and were, at court, legally equal to men. However, ancient Egypt still was a patriarchal society dominated by men. Only a few women are known to have important positions in administration, though there were female rulers and even female pharaohs. Women in ancient Egypt were regarded as the equals of men in almost every aspect, even that of occupation. The man was the head of the household and nation, but women ran the home and contributed to the stability of that nation as artisans, brewers, doctors, musicians, scribes, and many other jobs, sometimes even those involving authority over men. So, what was it like to be a woman in ancient Egypt? This is Women in History with Magnus. One of the central values of ancient Egyptian civilization, arguably the most important value, was ma'at, which means harmony and balance in all aspects of one's life. Egyptian art, architecture, religious practices, and even governmental agencies all exhibit perfect symmetry of balance, and this can also be seen in gender roles of ancient Egyptian civilization. Men held positions of authority such as king, governor, general, and a man was considered the head of the household, but within that patriarchy, women exercised considerable power and independence. What her rights were depended upon her social class, not her gender, and all landed property descended in the female line, from mother to daughter, not father to son. A woman was entitled to administer her own property and dispose of it as she wished. She could buy, sell, be a partner in legal contracts, be executor in wills and witness to legal documents, bring an action at court, and adopt children in her own name. Women could marry, at least if you were not royalty, who they wanted and divorce those who no longer suited them, could hold what jobs they liked within some limits and travel as they pleased. Because women in ancient Egypt had some special rights other women did not have in other comparable societies. With the exception of Sparta, check out my video on that. Women ran the home and contributed to the stability of that nation as artisans, brewers, doctors, musicians, scribes, and many other jobs, sometimes even those involving authority over men. A woman was entitled to administer her own property and dispose of it as she wished. She could buy, sell, be a partner in legal contracts, be executor in wills and witness to legal documents, bring an action at court, and adopt children in her own name. And just like in Viking society, Egyptian women could marry who they wanted and divorce those who no longer suited them. In stark contrast, an ancient Greek woman was supervised by a Kyrios, a male guardian, and had very limited options on what they could do without the permission of her husband, not unlike what we see in some countries today. Greetings, everyone. I'm thrilled to announce that I've recently crossed the impressive milestone of 1 million views and have welcomed over 5,000 subscribers to my YouTube channel. I want to extend my heartfelt gratitude to each and every one of you for making this journey possible. Be sure to like and subscribe for more history with Magnus. The Divine Feminine. And just like in the Viking religious beliefs, the gods were both male and female, and each had their own equally important areas of ability and prowess. The earliest creation myths in ancient Egypt all emphasize the value of the feminine principle, and the primordial waters are personified as Nu and Nonet, a balance of the male and female principles in harmony. Egyptian religion honored and elevated the feminine, so it is hardly surprising that women were important members of the clergy and temple life. Following the creation and beginning of time, women continued to play a pivotal role, as evidenced in the equally popular story of Osiris and Isis. This brother and sister couple were said to have ruled the world after its creation and to have taught human beings the precepts of civilization, the art of agriculture, and the proper worship of the gods. Even the passage of the year was viewed as feminine and as personified by Renpe, who notched her palm branch to mark the symbolizing passage of time. The goddess Bastet, one of the most popular in all of Egypt, was a protector of women, of the home, and of women's secrets. Women and religion. The most important position a woman could hold was God's wife of Amun. The God's wife was an honorary title given to a woman who would assist the high priest in ceremonies and tend to the god's statue. Women were also consulted in dream interpretation, and it was said that they were able to predict the future. Dreams were considered portals to the afterlife, where gods and the dead could communicate with the living. Occupations of women. Female doctors were highly respected in ancient Egypt, and the medical school in Alexandria was attended by students also from many other countries. The Greek physician Agnotis was denied an education in medicine in Athens because of her gender. However, she went to Egypt and studied there and then returned to her home city, disguised as a man to practice her profession. Women were regularly employed as weavers, bakers, brewers, professional mourners. Yes, that actually was a thing. Sandal makers, and many other professions. They could also start as a mistress of the house, which is something like an estate owner or property manager. There were many other ways in which a mistress of the house could supplement her income. One document shows an enterprising woman purchasing a slave for 400 dibin. She paid half in clothing and borrowed the rest from her neighbors. She would then rent out the slave, as you do, to repay the loan. In one example, a woman received several garments, a bull, and 16 goats as payment for 27 days' work by her slave. Those who could not raise the money on their own sometimes joined with neighbors to buy a slave together. We know that a woman could inherit and operate a large, wealthy estate and would hire a male scribe to manage it. We also know that female brewers and launderers frequently supervised male workers, in other words, being their superior. When a woman's husband died, or when they divorced, a woman could keep the home and do whatever she pleased. This aspect of gender equality is almost astounding compared to women's rights in the Western world no more than 50 to 60 years ago. A widow in America in the early 19th century, that's only 100 years ago, did not have any rights in homeownership and was totally dependent on a male relative's intercession to keep her home. Especially talented women could also find work as concubines. However, a concubine was not simply just a sex worker, but needed to be accomplished in music, conversation, weaving, sewing, fashion, culture, religion, and the arts. Some of these concubines would have been kept by the pharaoh as part of his harem, but for most Egyptians, marriage was monogamous and for life. Love, sex, and marriage. Women were considered legally capable in every aspect of their lives and did not require the supervision, consultation, or approval of a man in order to pursue any course of action. This paradigm applied to marriage and sex as well as any other area of one's life. Women could marry anyone they chose to. Marriages were not arranged by the males of the family, and they could divorce when they pleased. There was no stigma attached to divorce, and the woman could marry again, and a woman's sexual experience before marriage was not a matter of great concern. The only admonitions concerning female sexuality have to do with women who tempt men away from their wives. Ancient Egyptian couples also entered into prenuptial agreements which favored the woman. If a man initiated the divorce, he lost all right to sue for anything and had to pay a certain sum in alimony to his ex-wife until she either remarried or requested that he stop the payment, and the children of the marriage always went with their mother. Egyptian queens and female influence. There is no denying that Egyptian royalty lived well, and the many queens and lesser wives who lived in the palace would have experienced enormous luxury. The palace of Amenhotep III at Malkata extended over 30,000 square meters, 30 hectares, with spacious apartments, a throne room, and a receiving hall. The women who lived in such palaces experienced a life far above that of the lower classes, but still had their duties to fulfill in keeping with Mayat. Egyptologist Sally Ann Ashton says the following: "In a world that was dominated by the male pharaoh, it is often difficult to comprehend fully the roles of Egyptian queens. A pharaoh would have a number of queens, but the most important would be elevated to principal wife. The role of the principal or great wife varied with the pharaoh. Queen Tai regularly took part in the affairs of state, acted as a diplomat, and even had her name written in a cartouche like a king. Nefertiti, the wife of Akhenaten, cared for their family while also helping her husband run the country. When her husband essentially abandoned his duties as pharaoh to concentrate on his new monotheistic religion, Nefertiti assumed his responsibilities. All these women exerted considerable influence over their husbands, the court, and the country. The women of ancient Egypt stood as some of the most liberated and independent individuals of their era, a status only rivaled by the formidable Spartan women. They basked in the belief of equality between the sexes, where both female and male gods held equal importance, and women held pivotal roles within society. In the realms of employment, they possessed the remarkable privilege of choosing their professions. Inheritance of property, particularly the family home, was their birthright, granting them a significant degree of autonomy over their lives. Thank you for holding on all the way to the end. If you found this exploration of women in ancient Egypt interesting, please consider giving the video a thumbs up and subscribing to my channel. And be sure to explore our other videos on women in history to discover more captivating stories from the past. And I hope to see you in the next one.